Okay, hello everybody, and welcome to this presentation. My name is Teacher Eduardo, and this is a presentation geared towards the APA Citation Guidelines. This is a basic beginner's guide for university students. We're just going to go over some of the basics of how to do APA citations, to list book sources, and also to cite authors within our writing. So let's get going here with this presentation. Right, so the points that we will be covering here today, first we'll get into some basic notions of why it is important to use citations to list sources. We'll also get into some ideas for the bibliography in relation to books. Also we'll get into the actual parts. We'll go section by section. We'll also talk about the bibliography in relation to internet sources. So this is a whole new idea because now with internet and everything, we need to be careful with who or what we're citing when it is a digital source of this nature. And finally, we'll talk about some of the actual in-text citations. We'll see some examples, some basic formatting, so that you can get going with your next essay, your next academic article that you're going to be writing. Right, so let's get into it here. Why is it important? Why is it important to cite authors, to reference other people and what they have done when I'm writing about a certain topic? Well, there's a few ideas here that we want to consider. First of them is, we need to remember that we're citing or we're consulting other people because it's used for research and furthering current knowledge. So that information that I'm citing is not just because the teacher told me that I need to do it or because the school is telling me to do it. It's just an academic and a science way of doing things, a scientific way of doing things, of taking knowledge that is inherited from people that have already done research in this field, and you're taking that knowledge and you're creating something new. You're creating new content. You're either explaining it, you're exposing it, or you're adding through your reasoning, through your logical research. So that's very important to do in that sense. Another reason why it is important to cite authors is because it shows you're up to date with the theories and practices in the field of study. You might be writing about any specific topic. However, your ideas might be outdated. So if you include citations from authors that have done studies in recent years, you give that validity and that currentness to your writings. So it's very important to cite authors maybe between 10 to 20 years. You don't want to go too far back. Another reason why it is important to cite authors within your writings is because it's not necessary to reinvent the wheel. You might think that if you're going to write something about didactic material, that you need to explain everything that there is to explain about it, when in fact maybe other authors have already explained it. They've dedicated years to that, so all you need to do is cite them within your writings, and you don't need to explain much other than that. You can actually let the other author explain it for you by citing him or her. So in that way, you don't need to reinvent the wheel, as we say. And also, once again, as you're doing those citations, you need to give credit where credit is due. So it is very important that you follow a certain standard so that when somebody else is reading you, somebody in the field can identify how you're taking information from other people. And also when you're reading somebody else's work, you understand how they're taking information from other people. So by having these standards, it allows us to get to that primary source of information. Also, do consider that your ideas are actually a synthesis of a world of knowledge that is around you. So because we're social beings, we work in society, we're constantly exposed to other people, to ideas, to information from all over. So everything you know is in fact a synthesis. Now, when you're writing academically in a serious manner, what you need to do is you need to break apart that synthesis, and you need to identify where those bits of information are coming from. And that is the citation that we need. So you can't just start writing just as a gut feeling, as something of an impulse, because it's a synthetic or a synthesis of information that you know, but you're not making reference to anybody. You actually have to break it down. And that's where those citations come in, as I'm mentioning. So be sure to always look at the information in its most elemental stage and not in a global area. Right. Also, something in a positive note here also, you can also consider that your research, whatever you're writing, if you're following the academic standards, somebody else can cite you. If maybe your article or your essay, you submit it to a newsletter, to a journal of some kind, and it gets published, that means that because you follow these standards, other people can actually cite you now. So that's actually a very good thing when you come across another reading and you find a quote and it turns out that you were the one that came up with that quote. So that can actually happen if you dedicate time to developing your writing skills, to properly citing other authors, and to submitting articles to journals. This actually can happen. And finally, another reason here of why it is important to use citations is basically to avoid plagiarism. So remembering that plagiarism is basically stealing or using other people's ideas and saying that they are your own, when in fact it is obviously not the case. This is a very serious thing to do. It's taken very seriously by teachers and by academic institutions. It can vary in the degree of consequence, but still there is. You can lose a lot. You can lose the grade for that assignment, and it can be as severe as being expelled from the academic institution. So do avoid plagiarism at all costs. You don't want to be expelled in that manner. Also, if you're in the field, if you're already a professional and you submit an article to a newsletter or a journal, and they detect that your article is plagiarist, that you're taking ideas from other people and assuming that they are your own, that also has some very serious repercussions. You can be fined, you can be legally sued, and you can also be publicly discredited. And the repercussion after that is nobody will take you seriously. So very important to always cite your authors. You're already researching, so it's just building that list of citations of book references and properly including them in your writings. Right, so let's get then into the bibliography in relation to actual physical books. Right, so your bibliography or your bibliography section is basically your list of books that you have consulted for the research that you're writing up. Now, in your bibliography, you only want to list those books which you actually are citing within your writing. If for some reason you consulted 20 books, but within your writing you're only citing 10 authors or 10 books, then only those 10 books are the ones that you're going to include here. The ones that you're not, well, that you just shouldn't, because they are not part of your development. Okay, so let's get a little bit here into building a bibliography listing. It has a series of parts, about 4 to 5 parts. So we'll look at each one individually, and then we'll look at some examples of how it is all put together. So the first thing, or the first item in your listing here is going to be the author. So the first thing you're mentioned is the author's name. And this has a few characteristics, which we have here on the top. First thing is you're going to list the name, the last name of the author, and the first letter has to be in capitals. Then you're going to use a comma, and then you're going to use the initial of the first name of the author, and that has to be also in capital letter, and you're going to finalize on a period. And here we have a few practical examples. So notice the first capital letter on the last name. This is the last name, comma, initial of the first name, capital letter, and we finalize on a period. So we have Thornberry, comma, S, period. Here we have last name, comma, first letter, capital of the first name, and finalize on a period. Harmer, comma, J, period. Comma, P, period, and Richards, comma, J, period. And that's how you start a book listing with the author. Now, this is fairly simple, very straightforward when you have just one author, but a lot of times it turns out that you have multiple authors. So here we have some examples for that. When you have two authors, well, you just repeat it. Whatever you have here, you just repeat it by two. So we have the last name, comma, initial of first name, period. We're going to put a comma, and then we're going to use an ampersand. Remember, the ampersand means and. And then we repeat, last name, comma, initial first name, period. So Halliday, comma, M, period, comma, and Hassan, comma, R, period. So that's when you have two. But when you have three, well, it's fairly the same idea, you just extend it a little more. So here we have author number 1, comma, author number 2, comma, and author number 3, final period. So imagine this is very similar to when you're doing a list within a sentence. Let's say you're going to list 3 places where you went. So you could say something like, yesterday I went to school, to the cafe, and to the park. So in the way that in that listing you would put commas, in the same way here you need those commas to separate, and then but this is the ampersand, the last one. So fairly straightforward. Just put those commas and put that ampersand and you're good to go. The ampersand, just final note here, goes right before the last one. Okay, you don't want to put Halliday and M and Harmer J and. It's just next to the last one. Now, there are times when you have listings of a big number of contributors to a publication. We're talking 9, 10, 11, or 12. It's rare, but it does tend to happen at times. It's important to note that in an APA style bibliography, you can only list a number of 7 authors for one publication. So what we're going to do here, it's going to be apparent here in a moment. We go in this manner. So we go author number 1, comma, author number 2, comma, author number 3, comma, number 4, comma, 5, comma, 6, comma, ellipses. You'll notice here I put 3 periods. This represents an ellipsis and basically is telling the reader that there are more authors here, but I've reached the limit based on my guidelines for listing books. So just understand that there are more authors here for this book that I'm not going to list here. And I'm going to list the last one. Okay, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, ellipsis, 7. You can list a maximum of 7 authors in your bibliography for one publication. Okay, and that's basically how you do it for multiple authors when it comes going up to the limit of 7. Next point to take into consideration is the year of publication. So the year of publication is basically, well, very like the name says, the year the book was published for the first time. And we're going to put this in the parentheses. And we don't want to confuse this with the reprint date. You'll find many times that a book becomes popular. So let's say that on the publication date, they emitted 200,000 copies. say it became so popular that they did a reprint of that book. They didn't modify anything, they just reprinted it. So in that reprint, they include an additional date, which is the date of the reprint, and then maybe it got up to a third reprint, so it'll have an additional date also. So don't be confused for those reprints, because they're not changing any content, it's just a reprint. So we want to get the year of publication, not of reprint. These are two different things. So look for the publication date. And here we have some examples of that. 2001, just the year in 4-digit format within parentheses, and that's it, really. So we have the author name, then we have the year of publication. The next item here is the book title. So the book title has its own characteristics that we need to pay attention to. So we begin with the title of the book. In this case, you're going to capitalize the first letter of the title. You're going to find that in a lot of books, they use their own formats and their own standards depending on the design of the book. They have other guidelines, but we need to unify that. So even if the book title has all capitals, or has lowercase and uppercase, or has italics, or has underlines, or whatever it might have, you have to strip it away, and you're going to capitalize the first letter, and you're going to italicize the title of the book. Okay? The subtitle, you're going to want to keep that in normal font. So just the book title, so that you can clearly tell the reader this is the title of the book. Out of all of these words and numbers that are mixed up in one line, I can clearly identify what the book title is. And what you're going to use a colon to separate the subtitle from the title. Okay, this way we don't have a run-on, and you don't know if it's a very long book title or what. So that colon is going to help us separate what is what. And we're going to finish on a period as well. So here's some practical examples of that. Here we have A Course in Language Teaching, book title, subtitle. There's a semicolon right there, the 2 dots. Practice in Theory, final period. English as a Global Language, final period. There is no subtitle, so we just finalize on the period. And here we have How to Teach English, semicolon, an Introduction to the Practice of English Teaching, final period. So here we have some examples with just the book title and book title with subtitles. Moving on then, and here's the last actually, we're going to unite the 2 elements into one. We're going to talk here location and publisher. These kind of go hand in hand, so I'm going to list them here together. So talking about the location here, you want to name the city and the state. The state when available. You'll find that in many countries they politically don't divide it by states for some reason. So if there is no state, well, you just don't use it, but when there is, you want to put it in there. Also, for talking about the state, you want to use a postal abbreviation and no periods. So we'll see here some practical examples of that. Also, you want to write the name of the publishing house, so that when we say publisher, we mean the publishing house. Who is publishing this book, right? As before, you want to use a colon as a separator between the publisher, the location, and publisher, just like we have in the example up here. That is a colon. And some practical examples of that. Well, here we have New York, that would be the city, and Y would be the abbreviation of the state, semicolon, publisher, in this case Cambridge. Here we have another one, Cambridge, semicolon, Cambridge. Turns out that Cambridge is a city in the UK, but there is no state, so we don't put it. But there is also a publisher called Cambridge, so that's why you have that repetition right there. One is the city, the other is a publisher. Another one here is we have Oxford, no state, Macmillan Heinemann. That's the publisher right here. That's the location right there. So that's how you add that final element to the book listing in your bibliography. Right. So let's see here some practical examples of that. So once you've completed your essay or your article, at the end of that, you want to include your title bibliography. Okay, so and after this is you're going to start listing all of the resources, all of the sources that you consulted, which helped you to develop that writing that's above here. So I think that if you start to identify these or read these, you'll notice that you can actually understand what they are about. Here we have the author name, the publication year, the name of the book. The book is just called Grammar. This is where it was published, and this is who published it. Here again, we have an author name, who published in this year. He published an Introduction to Functional Grammar. This was in London, and Edward Arnold was the publisher. Here we have another one, and you'll notice this is fairly long. We have here two authors published in 2011. They published Teaching Grammar in Second Language Classrooms, subtitle Integrating Form-Focused Instruction in Communicative Context, published in Abingdon, Routledge. Now, you'll notice here we have a very long subtitle. Don't be afraid of those very long subtitles. You have to write everything. Okay, even if it comes down to 2, 3, 4 lines, you have to write all of the information, no abbreviations. Again, write everything. So don't be afraid of those very long titles. Here we have another one, 2 authors, book title, there you go, Thornberry, Uncovering Grammar, Oxford, Macmillan, Heinemann. So those are the basic parts for building up your bibliography in your academic essay or your article using APA guidelines. Okay, moving on here to internet sources.